So, Judd, tell us a little bit about your role and your company.
Yeah. So I'm with UrbanFootprint. It's a Series B geospatial data analytics company. And we work at the intersection of climate hazards, community resilience, and the built environment. And we work primarily with large institutions across real estate, energy, insurance sectors. The VP of Finance here would have a pretty broad kind of purview, finance, HR, legal, IT. We have a pretty small finance team, so we're definitely look to find innovative ways to work faster and deliver insights kind of more quickly.
It's amazing, doing important work. What are some of the business challenges that convinced you to look for a solution like Subscript?
Yeah. So the major challenges were really reducing time to close, increasing the time to insights that we could provide, right? So um, when we break that down into what Subscript is solving for us, one was invoicing being tracked on sticky notes, which led to a lot of inefficiencies, delays in collections, as well as kind of pushing close because we'd have to wait until invoicing was kind of in and done. And then the second piece is the revenue recognition was all being tracked in a pretty cumbersome spreadsheet. Uh, and that took both a couple days to just close. And then if you wanted to do any analytics on top of that information, it was really challenging and time consuming to answer relatively simple business questions.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And especially when it comes to sort of time to insight, how does that like help you support your role?
Yeah. So as a Series B company, we're really looking to obviously expand our market, but more importantly, expand our fit within that market to drive growth into these adjacent spaces, right? And so as we're iterating as a team, whether it's new customer profiles that we're selling to, trying to evaluate whether or not new features are resonating with a given market, the trailing evidence comes back to finance, right? And so being able to parse our customer base, parse their journey, and kind of align that in our case. So that's where Subscript comes in, is our ability to really segment our customers well, look at their journeys, kind of their revenue journey with us, and then using that information and extrapolating whether it was new sales techniques or new feature releases into that customer base against that information has been really valuable.
Yeah, I love that, like truly like amazing value add for the business work that the finance team does, and really supporting the business accomplish its mission, which is cool.
Yeah, but it's so important. I think finance too often, with manual processes and pretty cumbersome technology, we get stuck in um, we get stuck in a rut of always being behind the ball, right? Like it takes too long to answer simple business questions, so people don't rely on you for that insight and for that information. And so I think really leaning into automation, leaning into standardization within technology can allow you to be that trusted partner that we really should be.
Yeah. So for better or for sorry, for better or for worse, Subscript is not the only company that does this. And you've been around the block for a minute, and so I'm curious. You know what the landscape looks like. Why did you choose to work with us?
Yeah. So you're right. I've worked with or looked at a number of different products in this, Ordway, Maxio, ChargeBee, and Recurly. I'm pretty familiar with those four, and they each do different aspects of this pretty well. But ultimately, what it keeps coming down to, is that the accounting team with each of those other four, which are the ones I'm most familiar with, they're not flexible enough for accounting to really trust the revenue recognition cycle. And so what happens is you put this skin on the top, and the accounting team is still doing everything in spreadsheets and then just manually inputting information into those other tools. And so all you've done is created a reporting layer that still is inefficient, prone to error, and doesn't solve that central challenge of how do I answer business questions quickly with the data we have, because it's still being done manually.
Yeah. What did the implementation with Subscript look like?
Yeah, anytime you look to implement a new piece of technology, I think there's obviously a trade-off around time to implement, the distraction that causes relative to time to value, as well as future savings. And I think Subscript, relative to many other solutions, was pretty easy. It took us about 3 months to kind of fully get up and running, but we were able to get value kind of throughout that process. So we got up and running on invoicing very quickly, saw some immediate savings there in terms of just invoices being sent out on time, collections happening more smoothly. And then the bulk of the remaining 2 months was really us in conjunction with the Subscript team, Lucas and Emily specifically, on cleaning up old data. So it was, running down errors in our previous deferred revenue schedule, finding anomalies in contracts, and really making that decision on what to do with that. And I think the Subscript team made that part really easy. They did a lot of the heavy lifting, coming up with suggestions for workflow improvement, bringing errors to us, and allowing us then to really focus on the decision of how we wanted to handle those anomalies.
That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about sort of working with the Subscript team to get the implementation, and then once you did, or even in that process, how has Subscript helped you and your team?
So I think overall it's saved a lot of time. It's cut a day or two off of close. It's led to much faster and easier invoicing, which is fantastic when you're working with a small team. And it leads to a lot of confidence in our team and what we're doing. And then we're able to spend much more time in the analysis, in extrapolating past results and into kind of updated forward-looking guidance, and really just leaning into providing value and insights to the business, as opposed to kind of the compliance-based closing of the books, or collections, etc.
Are there any metrics or KPIs that you look at that sort of show the success you've had with Subscript?
Yeah, I think it keeps coming back to time to close, right? And on a normal month, it saves at least a day, sometimes 2 days. The other metric that we really looked to track is how long it takes for invoices to go out. Previously, if you could audit it, it would often take several days after we sign an account to get an invoice out, and that's real cash in the bank that we are deferring. And now it is same day, or at most the day after, before an invoice goes out to a customer.
That's awesome. How do you think about the ROI of something like Subscript?
Yeah, well, I think so. There's a couple ways to look at it, and we've tracked both of these. One is the immediate savings of, fairly high cost resource with our accounting manager having, 8 to 16 hours back to focus on other areas in the business and really support, me on the FP&A side, as well as the additional savings that our AR and AP manager has back in her day when it comes to just getting invoices out. So that's one that's pretty easy to quantify, where it's at least 20 hours a month of person hours back for other projects. The other one, of course, is faster cash flow. So we are not we're not financing our collections effectively off of our balance sheet as much. And then if I look ahead, we are I strongly believe that we're going to be able to defer an additional accounting headcount by 6 to 12 months, based off of the automation that we give with Subscript and its ability to kind of scale with us.
That's awesome. When it comes to sort of um, helping you as a finance leader support better decision making on the team, how does Subscript support you in that? And how do you think about the potential ROI of that?
Yeah, well, I think and startups are all about speed, right? We have a defined runway. We need to show traction very quickly against that, and so it's getting a lot of iteration cycles. And to do that, you need to be able to get information, process the information, add context to it, and get it back. And so, previously, if someone asked me a question about our customer metrics, our ARR waterfalls, our churn metrics, it might take me a couple hours to a week, depending on what that question is, to answer it. And now with Subscript and the built-in analytics that's on top of our revenue recognition information, our contracts information, it's either an instantaneous answer, or most it's a few hours of digging in and formatting. But it's being able to provide that very quick feedback so that the team can continue iterating and moving quickly against our targets.
Totally. Yeah. Um, Very cool. What's one thing that you'd want someone who's considering Subscript billing and analytics to know?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to, we are often in finance afraid to make that investment in new software tools. The implementation can be challenging. The ROI may or may not be vague. There's always the question of, can Excel just do this better? And I think that in our case, the implementation and onboarding was very light relative to other technology solutions that I've implemented in the past. And we were able to start getting value very quickly throughout that process. And, now just, a few months in, we're saving hours every month on close that's going to other high value items. And again, I think it's, the actual hard cost of it will pay for itself within the first year post implementation, just based on cost savings and deferred headcount, as well as frankly faster collections.
Very cool. This next question is going to sound a little repetitive, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case new ideas come to mind. We talked a little bit about how you've gotten value from Subscript. Can you tell me if the investment in Subscript, the product, has been worth it?
Yeah. The investment has absolutely been worth it, right? I think if we look at just the hard cost savings related to our accounting manager being able to focus on other areas, it's paid for itself within a year. And then obviously the intangible benefits of faster decision making, better information going to the business team, has been invaluable. And again, if we hit our growth targets this year, I think we're going to be able to do it in a highly leveraged way with a very efficient finance team.
This one also might be a little repetitive, but whatever comes to mind would be great. Every B2B business is quite complex and unique in its own ways. Anything you can share in terms of how Subscript has helped handle the complexity that's specific to UrbanFootprint?
Yeah. So one of the things that was a big concern for us is that we have several different customer segments that we're servicing with different pricing and packaging. So that can be annual contracts for a certain package of insights. It can be a usage-based contract, and it can also be short-term contracts with straight line deferred rev rec. And in each of those, so one of our main concerns when looking at that was, can it actually handle all of these different scenarios? Or like some of the other solutions we've worked with, is the accounting team just going to do everything in Excel, and then we've just created more work for them to then input that information into Subscript. And so far, it's been fantastic at adapting to every one of those use cases, whether it's an annual subscription, a short-term subscription, or a usage-based pricing model, and that's been just fantastic. That was really unexpected and critical to our success here.
Very cool. You talked a little bit about some of the support you got in the implementation of the product. How has the support been as you've actually used it?
Yeah, both Emily and Lucas continue to be invaluable, right? I'm routinely just the other week had a question about the cohort analysis, right? And I got a long note from Lucas, significant follow-up on that, different ideas for how to get that information, and I think a real request for product feedback of like, oh, you needed to perform this type of analysis that's a little bit different than others. What does that look like? How can we integrate that into the product? How can we keep making sure that we're solving these use cases? So it's been fantastic. I know that our team has gotten a significant amount of support, whether it's with invoicing or the deferred revenue or revenue recognition modules, and leans on them quite heavily.